in order to access the App Designer, you can go to the main menu and type App Designer. Or you can go under App Factory, Application Builder, App Designer. Here is a low-code, no-code environment where users can create their own applications following some simple steps. You can see the existing apps that you have. You can use the filters to filter your applications based on the application types, the status, the categories, and also you can use the search functionality to find the specific existing application. For now, we will create a new simple application, simple table application. So I will click create an app. In the pop-up, I would choose the application type, table application. Based on the application type, different fields will appear here. I will define the application name. This is what the end users will see, the title of the application after we publish it. The description is informatory only for the designers. For the field category, I can choose from the existing options, or I can add a new one. Collaborators refer to the group of people that would collaborate, and actually they will have access to this application. I can choose the option everyone, specific multiple users, or even options from a group. Let's say the IT group. Since I'm making a simple application that is data-driven and I will just add the office equipment information, I will remove the option is sequential and is process enabled that refer to different type of application. Process enabled means that I can link a workflow, and is sequential refers if I want to create only sequential steps. I can also upload an image for my application, and that will be visible only inside the App Designer. If I do not upload an image, a default one will be automatically populated. After I click Save, my new application is being created. I will be redirected to the first step, which is a dashboard. In the step dashboard, I can get an overview of my application. I can see quick stats, the number of forms, the number of widgets, and the application activity, the basic info that we already defined before, the collaborators, and the comments area. Everyone that has access to this application, they can make a comment, so the rest collaborators will receive a notification. The most important part is step 2. Depending on the type of application that we have, different options will appear. For a simple data-driven application like this one, I have to define the data model, the table view, and the user forms. Let's start with the data model. In the data model, I am able to create the fields that are necessary for my application. I can create many types of fields. Let's start by creating a new field by clicking on the plus icon. This is the creation form where I can define the label of my automatically it will populate the column name, which refers to the field as stored in the database. I should define the type. Here you can see all the available types of fields. For example, I will choose number. When you choose the type number, you should define if it has decimal places and also the number of characters, the size. I would continue with saving new, so my field is saved and I can keep adding more fields. I would choose a text field. For text fields, you should define the size. Again, it refers to the number of characters. The top size can be up to 1000 characters. Let's continue with another field. I would create a key value list field. When you choose this option, this type, you should also define the options of your drop-down list. By clicking on the plus icon, you add more rows. By clicking on the minus button, you remove rows. So I would define, for example, let's add one more. Okay, now let's continue. with the serial number. This will be a text of, let's say, 25 size, the date of purchase, so we choose a date field. I can also create a binary field where I can upload a file, the invoice, and also I can add the used by, so I can make a connection to which personnel is used this particular equipment. So in this case I would choose the record type, where I'm able to choose any kind of application or out of the box business app that I have in my account. In this case I would choose to fetch personnel, and I will click save. After I have created all my fields, I need to reload the database. You can see here this red button appearing. So if I click that, and open again App Designer, all my fields have been properly stored. Now, after we have added all the fields, I can move on to table view. In this step, I'm able to determine the columns of my table application. By default, all fields that I have created have been added here. I can click on the X button to remove a field from the column. I can rearrange the fields so I can define their position. I can add again back if I want a field, and also I can click on the pencil button if I would like to apply some changes. For example, to change the label, add a prefix to this column, change the alignment, the column size, add a suffix or other options. On the user forms, designers have full control over the forms, what the end users will see. Currently, I do not have any form, so I need to click on the plus button to create a form. Let's create the equipment form and click save.
I will be redirected to the design preview on the
right
side,
and on the left side
and
I can
on the
see
basic and advanced info on the right side of the screen.
Form. Let's start with the design. You can see here a notification. This means that our form is not published. I have available elements and fields. This is my preview. I can add multiple panels. I can add multiple sections. I can change the layout of each panel. For example, here I can define that I want 2 sections, whereas here I want to have 3 sections or 1. Let's keep it simple. If I would like, I can remove a section. Of course, I can change the labels of the sections. So for example, for here I would add basic info, purchase info, and also here additional info. Okay, now after I have added all the panels and sections that I want, I can drag and drop the fields. You can see here the available fields that we have created. We have the code, we have the date of purchase and the invoice, the name, type, and used by. After I add the fields, I can also add some properties. By clicking on a specific field, you can see that it populates this window with options. I can define, for example, if my field will be view only, and immediately I can see also the preview of it. I can define, for example, to be mandatory, to add tooltip, pattern, placeholder, alignment, and many more options. Now for the name I will add required. For type also, actually I would also type a tooltip just to show you the functionality if it exists. Okay, the tooltip actually is going to show an info icon next to the field with guidelines for the end user. Apart from the panels and sections that we have seen in the fields, I can also add paragraphs, maybe add it here, where I can add my message. I can apply the font styles, colors that I want. So I have full control over my form. Finally, I can also include styles. Let's say that I want to change either the page color, light blue. I can change the headers. And also the font color. The same applies also for labels. I can add borders, change background colors, font size, and so on, and also for the input. After I finish with all the changes that I want, I need to click the button Publish, so my form will be stored. Let me change that to something darker. Okay, so it would be readable. Now, on the right side of my screen, I can see the basic and advanced information about my form. Firstly, we have the title. So if I need to change it, I have to type the new title and click Save. I can define the access, which people should be able to view this form. Then I have the option to click Main. This option for simple table applications should be always checked. Otherwise, the form will not be visible. For workflow apps, we can leave it empty because it can only be added in a workflow task. Since this is not a process application, we need to click the option Check. I can also define whether my form will be primary or not. If I want it to be primary, I should choose Replace Existing Form. And finally, I will click Save. After that, I can continue to the next steps. In step 3 that we will see later on, I can create graphs. In step 4, I can add more advanced options, field rules, event scripts, depending on the complexity of my process. And the final step is the configuration. In this step, I'm able to finalize my application, to define from a list of basic options, for example, to include comments, to be able to insert, update, or delete, to print or export my table. And finally, I need to define the primary field. This field is going to be the title of my record. So here I can choose, for example, the name. In data customization, I'm able to define some other information for my data. For example, I can add an incremental number. By choosing an incremental number, this numeric field will be increased every time we add a new record by 1. I can define it to start from 0 or from a specific value. I can also add a prefix and a suffix. For example, equipment dot, and it should also get the code. So I can also use here the text primary field. So the primary field would be the prefix plus the incremental number. I can also define level of categorization. For example, I can group my data based on a specific field, let's say per type. I can go up to 3 levels of categorization, and I can also define an ordering, ascending or descending. After I finish with all the data configuration that I want, I'm ready to publish my application. By clicking on the Publish button, my application is being published, is ready to be used by the end users. This is the result. This is a table application that I have created, a data-driven, simple application. All table applications have common features, for example, the search functionality, the filters, and the grouping. Here we can see the columns as I have created them through the App Designer. And on top we can see the plus button and the options to print and export. By clicking on the plus button, we will be redirected to the form that we created before. I can define type, I can add the serial number. Here you can see the tooltip, you can see which fields are mandatory, which fields are view only, the different colors, the paragraph that we saw before. This is the record field that we saw, that we created, that is fetching the personnel. And if I click save, my record is being stored. You can see that the code has gotten automatically the first incremental number, whereas the name, as we said before, it has also gotten the incremental with the prefix. If I refresh my table, I can see the first row has been created. Let's add one more. Okay, so now I have two records. On the left side you can see also the grouping per the type. So I have one printer and one desktop. Let's now continue with the second type of application, a sequential process application. In this example, we will see the request of equipment, which will have 3 sequential steps. Let's start again by creating an app. In the pop-up again, I will choose table application. The title would be request equipment. I would add category supply chain and collaborators everyone. I will leave both options checked because it would be linked with the workflow and it would be sequential. And save. Again, I will be redirected to the dashboard. Here again I can see some quick stats, the basic info, collaborators and comments. It's the same interface as in the simple application. Though in second step I can see a new tab which is called workflow. Data model, table view and user forms are the same. Here I can actually draw all the sequential steps. By clicking on this button I can see this pop up. Here I can define the first step title, who it's going to be completed by, and with drag and drop I can include all the fields that are going to be visible to this step. So I'm creating a task, a form, and which fields are going to be included to this form. Let's start by request equipment. It should be assigned to the creator. Here you can see a list of some dynamic options, but also can add specific groups or specific users or leaders. Here you can see all the available field types that we offer. With drag and drop I can define all the necessary fields for my for this step. So for example, I can add a text. In this pop-up I can define the label and the size, the default value, and even add a tooltip, and click save. Immediately my field has been stored in the database. I can also add a comments area. I can add date field from and to. I can also add a drop-down list key value, like the equipment type, and again I can define here the keys and the values. After I finish with all the fields that I want in this step, I can click Save. Immediately, it has created in the system all the fields. Here, I can also view them in the table view, and also it has created the form. So I will go back to the workflow and continue adding the rest sequential steps of this process. The second step is going to be review request. It should be assigned to the creators manager, where here I can add another field, a list, review with two options, approve and reject. Another memo, review comments and save. Here you can see the first step has 5 fields, whereas the second has 2. I will continue with a third step. Choose equipment, which is going to be assigned to the IT department, where the IT should choose from a record list the existing equipment. So in this case, I will choose the application that I created before, so it could fetch actually all the records of this table. And also I would add another field, new equipment required, yes, no, and click Save. Now all the fields that I have created are visible in the data model. In the table view, I can define which fields I want to be visible and in which position. And also I can see the 3 forms that are attached to the tasks. If I want, I can create more forms and of course more fields. I can also open an existing form and apply any changes, apply rules. So for example, the review should be mandatory and click Save. I can also add tooltips, styles, paragraphs and many more. I would also create one initiation form, one quick add form, where I can define the request description and publish it. I will also make this form available in the quick add menu and click Save. Once I have defined all those, I can go to the configuration, where I can define the basic options. For example, the allow print, the allow export. Here we can see some more options. For example, the automatically start process, which will trigger the workflow automatically. I will remove the insert mode because I have created a quick add form. And again, I should define the primary field. I would choose the request description. After I have defined all the important information, I can go also to the data customization and I can define, for example, the level of categorization and also who should view each record. The assigned to, for example, refers to which people are assigned to each request equipment process. If I choose the creators manager and let's say the IT department again, IT department will view all processes. Each user will view their own requests and of course the manager will view their subordinates' requests. After I click Publish button, my application is published. Again, you can see the same table as we viewed before, but this time our application is actually process enabled, which means that it is also linked to a workflow. Let's see now how we can run our sequential application. Since I have created a quick add form, I can either search for it, quick add equipment request, so you can see the quick add form that I have created. Or if we go back to the App Designer, you can also see here this run button. It's the same, either from within the App Designer or its end user, let's say, can run it from the menu under quick add. Let's say laptop for meetings and click save. Once I click save, a new record is being stored to the request equipment. This is how the sequential process would look like to the end users. Here you can see all the steps that we have defined. We can see that step 2 and 3 are not clickable yet. Each step will have the form that we have created, and in order to complete one step and move on to the next one, you should click on the complete button. By clicking on the complete button, the form would be editable, so I can add the comments. Okay, you can see the date fields, the type, and click save. Once I click save, you can see that the second step is now clickable. If I click on the second step, I can actually view this the form that was created for this second step. If I click complete again, I can now edit the second step, approve or reject, and my comments. And finally, the third step is also clickable, so I can actually see here and complete the third step. Equipment 1 or equipment 2 and so on. No. And click save. Only when all the steps are completed, the whole process will also be completed. Here in the table, we can now see the first record. Here we can also see the link between two tables. So we can see here that we have chosen, for example, the equipment 1. For more advanced processes, we can switch to BPMN, so we can have multiple paths, advanced features, and complex rules. So in the application designer, I would open the application we just created, the sequential application. Here we can see the quick stats that have been updated with the number of forms, number of steps, and the application activity that we have. And if we go to step 2, I can switch to BPMN design. If I click this button, a confirmation pop-up will appear. By clicking yes, I will switch my design to BPMN view. Comidor offers the powerful workflow engine that is compliant with BPMN 2.0 notation. Here you can see the diagram that was automatically created based on the sequential steps, but also you can see all the available components that we can offer. We have basic components such as tasks, processes, emails, the gateways, integration components such as RESTful web services to integrate with other systems, message queue, and some other ready-to-use integration components. Data components where we can manipulate the data of the workflow and either insert data to other tables, read files to import data in the system, export data, produce documents, parse Excel files, and many more. And finally, we have the RPA components, such as robotic process automation bots that can replicate human actions, either locally or in a web interface, AI capabilities, machine learning capabilities, and web scraping. Let's now enhance our current functionality of this application, for example, to include an alternative path. For example, under the review request, we could have a condition. We could have an alternative path in case the manager rejects. In this case, I would use the XOR gateway, so I can change the path, and instead of always going to the choose equipment, I can add a condition. So after this step, the review request is completed, we would have two alternative paths. The first one is going to be to choose the equipment, and this would happen only when the review is accept. So I would choose path type and I would add my condition. Here I can build simple or advanced conditions. I can add rows by clicking on the plus button or remove rows by clicking on the minus button. I can define also and or in between the conditions and even add parentheses for more complex cases. In our example, I would choose from the table request equipment the field review. So when the field review equals approve, go to this path. For an alternative option, I would add a notification. Through the notification component, we can trigger notifications that are being sent inside Comidor platform and will be displayed in the bell icon. I would define the title, the subject. For example, your request has been rejected. I can have hard-coded subject, but I could also add variables. For example, I can add here hashtag app and the database name of a field. In this way, every time that we run this workflow and it goes through this notification component, it will replace the value of this field. In the recipients, I can choose from the list the people or the group of people that I would like to be notified to receive this notification. I can apply the creator's manager, or multiple users or groups or leaders, and click Save. So now I can connect the second alternative path. Again, the path type would be conditional, and now I would choose the same field, the review to be equals reject. I can even type a path description, so this will be visible on top of my arrow. Finally, I will add another component, the end, with the parent stage failed. And if I connect this, I can also define the target state. So when the workflow reaches this step, the whole process would automatically change state. Instead of completed, I would choose failed. You can see different color here in comparison to the completed one here. Now, if we publish those changes, we can see the result. Let's trigger again an equipment request and click Save. You can see now that the main form, when we open the process, it's different. We do not have sequential steps, but we have the basic info of our process. Since our process is linked with a workflow, we can monitor under the tab Workflow Tasks everything that has happened so far, all the steps that have been created so far, the title, the assigned to, when it was created, and when it is ended. The first task is assigned to my user, so I'm also notified in my calendar. I can open it either from here or from here. By clicking on it, I can see the same form I saw before. I can add my comments. Once I have added all the data, I can click Save. If I go back to my process, I can check under the workflow tasks that a second task has been created. The first one is marked as completed, whereas the second one is pending. If I also click on the run diagram, I can see the path that was followed. The first step is completed, so it's highlighted in green, whereas the second one is in blue, which means it is pending. Now, depending on the option that I would choose in the review field, the workflow will follow different path. If I go with approve and go back to the process, we can see that the path that was followed is this one. Let's quickly run another example. Now in this case, I would choose the option reject. Once I click save, I can see now that no third task has been created, because if we check here, we can see that this path was followed. Also, we can see a notification was triggered. The message is your request has been rejected and the name of the request, and also the state of this request has been changed to failed. If we go to the table, we can see all the new records that have been created, all the request equipment processes. And on the left side, we can also see the grouping per the state. Anytime, I can go back to the App Designer, open my application, and add functionalities. For example, I can go to the request equipment application and go to step 3. In step 3, I'm able to create analytics for my application. We have various types of graphs that can be presented. The designers have the opportunity actually to represent the data from the runtime in various graph types. By clicking on the Create New Graph, a pop-up appears. In this pop-up, I should define the basic info, the design, and the advanced tab. Firstly, let's say that I want to create a request equipment date report. In type level, I would choose the type report, and based on the type, different options in the graph type will appear. Let's select the first option, date report. In tab design, you can see that by default it gets the fields and the data from the application request equipment. I can choose the aggregation between count or sum, and on the on field I would choose which field that I would like to count the data. For example, in our case, I want to count how many IDs, how many times actually this process has run. The date field would limit our data, so I would calculate how many times this application has run based on the started at date. I can also limit my data based on a condition. If I click save, this is how the date report would look like. We have the period, the number, and the percentage change. If I like, I can edit or delete an existing graph. Let's create one more report graph. So we choose table. In the design here there are no options, but in the advanced I can see that I can create my own table columns. So I can create a smaller table of my application with the columns that I like. I can choose from the list. I can add as many columns as I like. I can also add a query limit to define the number of records that my query would fetch, and also a condition so I can limit my data. For example, if I want to see only the ones that are completed or only the ones that the review is accept. If I click Save, I can see the table report. This table report is a small table that I can see the columns that I have created. It is also clickable, so for example, if I add it in my home dashboard, I can easily redirect to the processes that I want to monitor. Now, apart from the report type graphs, we can also create grouping charts. So I'm going to create group them per state. Now that I have chosen in the type grouping chart, in the graph type you can see various options: pie chart, bar chart, tube chart, horizontal bar, line, donut, and so on. In the design, again, I can define the aggregation, if it's going to be count on the IDs or if it's going to be sum on a numeric field. And here we can see the group field. Now, if I choose, for example, the state field and click Save, it will produce a pie chart grouping all the data that I have entered in my application per the state. As we said, we have the process state, the running, the completed, and the failed. I can edit a grouping chart and I can change, for example, to bar. So this is what it's going to look like. Let's create one more. Request equipment review. So I can choose again the grouping chart, donut, and here in the account I would group them per the review field, which is again a drop-down list with two options. So you can see here a donut. Now I can create as many graphs as I want, and I can either place them inside the application as a tab, or I can place them in the home dashboard. Let's see both options. We can go to the advanced step in user tabs. User tabs are additional functionalities that can enhance an application functionality. For example, I can include a user tab of type widget that shows the reports, the widgets that we have created before, and I can define where it should be visible in the table and also to whom. I can define it to be visible to all users or only to specific users. After I click Save, I can define which widgets I want to be visible. So by clicking on the Add widget, I can find from the list the widgets that I have created. I would select one and click Link. In the same way, I would add the rest widgets and the fourth one. If I want to remove a widget from this tab, I can click on the minus button. You can see that my Publish button has now this red color, which means that I need to publish my application. I have changes. Once I publish my application, I can see now a new tab that has been added to my table. So if I click now the reports, I can see now the widgets that I have created with real-time data. Likewise, if I go back to my home dashboard, and if I switch from view to edit mode, I can include graphs in my home dashboard. So I can choose again the widget that I want and click Save. I can then resize and place the widget wherever I would like to be visible.